Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Life Chronicles and Deep Dives podcast. I'm here with Coach Cornelia, all the way in Romania.
Hello, everybody.
And my name is Coach Ranjit, and I am here in the United States. Today, we are going to be talking about the topic of love. This topic is it's like one of the biggest interpersonal topics that most people could even dive into. It's very deep. It's very intricate. And sometimes it's complicated and messy. And we're going to get into that in this episode. So, since this was, Coach Cornelia's topic, Coach Cornelia, what is the definition of love?
Yeah, I was thinking earlier about this topic, and I don't know if you remember that song from Hathaway, What is Love?
Mm-hmm.
We are still wondering what is love. I don't think we have a straight up definition, so we are still searching for it.
Absolutely. I think love is so intricate because there's like a biomechanical nature to it, but there's also an emotional component to it. And I think that's like the finding the balance between the two in order to find meaning of love. You know, companionship starts from like birth. So a mother gives birth, and then the child comes. During that time, the mother is emotionally investing in the child. So there's like growth, there's birth, there's love being invested in the relationship. Even if one party, the child, the infant, the baby, can't return love as we know it as adults, they're still receiving love from the parent, right? And then that progresses. And then as the child grows into adulthood, we're going to skip a whole bunch of like minor details about, like growing up. As the child grows into adulthood, they've got a new idea of love, and that is finding a partner. And finding that partner does what? That creates another life through birth.
Sure. I wanted to say when you are saying from birth to being an adult, of course, when they are teenagers, they are not loving anyone and anything. So we cannot talk about love when we talk about teenagers.
Right. I mean, the hormones and all that flying around, teenagers definitely have a different idea of love. But also, I mean, there are some cases where people in their teenagers, like high school age, marry their high school sweethearts and stay married like into adulthood. Like, I mean, love can be created then. But again, it's all about like how much work people want to put into their relationship to move it forward. So
Yeah.
let's start with the biomechanical part of love. So, and I'm saying biomechanical. I'm not saying there's like robots or anything involved, but what I'm saying is that we talked about in another podcast episode of like casting the seed forward, the genetic information going forward. Love is a way to do that. So from when you're attracted to somebody, right, then you get to know them, you love them, the chemical reaction in your brain, and then the biomechanical reaction of procreation into another being is what love's about for that aspect. Like you're building genetic code, combining it with another, and moving forward into the future with a new genetic line. So,
how amazing it is. It's
yeah.
great.
I mean, and I'm not like a scientist or anything. I'm not like, I mean, but this is just like my personal thought process and opinion on like, why does love exist? Well, love exists to move our genetic code forward into the future to stay alive longer. We may physically not be alive. Like, let's say if I die, my daughter carries my genetic code
Yeah.
forward, right? And that's just the nature of life in that aspect. The emotional aspect of love is different. The emotional aspect of love is something that's like it's like beautiful. It's like I don't know, it's like starbursts and stuff, but also it can be painful at the same time. And it's it's part of life. It is just something that we participate in um that's beautiful. Caring about somebody else, growing with somebody else, communicating, energetically exchanging, not just the biogenetic moving forward part, but the growth between the two people, the laughs, the hugs, the tears that can be shared. Like, I mean, it's beautiful to see those things. It's beautiful to be a part of those things. And in fact, in some cases, it's necessary to have love. And I don't want to go super far off topic here, but like if a child and a mother, right, or a father or parental figures, both of them together, if the child doesn't receive love, uh, they do not flourish. So they have a less chance of survival.
Sure.
So it's important for love to be present, not just in the moving the genetic code forward part, but the emotional well being and also the nurturing of our young and helping them thrive.
Yeah. You reminded me of an experiment. It was Tommy, my dog. You reminded me, Tommy, stop. You reminded me of an experiment made with in a school with flowers, and they put the same flowers, one on the left, one on the right, and they said when the kids are coming to school, some of them have to say some loving words to one of the flowers, and the other ones some hateful words. And the one that received hateful words didn't survive, indeed. So, and the other one flourished, grew up beautifully, and made a lot of flowers. And the same thing happened with I don't know if you know Masaru Emoto. It's a Japanese who made to manage to film the water crystals, and he's done the same thing. He was saying good words to the water, and the crystals were arranging in a beautiful shape. And when he was saying bad words, the shape was really creepy. So you can actually scientifically prove how important is this energy called love, right?
Absolutely. And we're talking about experiments. There was one that was done with some sort of monkey, orangutan, gorilla. I don't know, but it was a young gorilla that had a mock-up of like a mother, and it wasn't a real monkey, orangutan, or gorilla. It was like a wireframe version of it, and then another one that had fur, so it was like imitating like a real one.
Mm.
And the one that interacted with the wireframe didn't flourish. The one that interacted with the one that had fur had a significantly better lifestyle. So it's interesting to see how love translates out, but also to plants. People can share love, positive energy with plants,
Mm.
um,
With
right?
animals.
Animals, for sure. And it's just interesting to see how all of those things prove that love is needed, not
Okay.
just not just to pass the code forward,
Mhm.
but to flourish in life.
Yeah.
There are people that don't get love, and they typically end up growing up to become narcissists, sociopaths, psychopaths, right? Subject to abuse, subject to neglect, right? Those are the people that don't have love, um, or there's a genetic predisposition for those things. And it's sad because I think everything on the planet, every person should be able to love and share that love with whoever they want. And I'm not
I
saying like hippie, like go out there and like do all that, but I'm saying like being able to express love in a meaningful way, in a mindful way, across the globe is something that I think that a lot of what we've kind of come to in the recent years is kind of fallen off. We've kind of like lost that ability to share that love in those degrees because we're so worried about getting ourselves ahead.
Well, it happens when even in a couple, it happens that, let's say, two people are getting in a couple and they know how to give love, but they don't receive it back, right? So they don't have it back. So then they have to give that love to themselves. If someone gives love to their partner and their partner gives the love back, you don't have to worry about yourself because you're already being cared for, right? But if someone stops giving love, so if this love cycle stops, then it's maybe it's a natural way of taking care of ourselves. When we don't receive love, then we take the love that we have inside of us and give it to ourselves so we can be cared for, right? So I think it's very important not to interrupt this cycle of giving and receiving. It has to be a cycle, a permanent cycle. And the same in the world. If we start being hateful, we're gonna start to receive hate. And this is maybe this is why we are in this situation today.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think um, when we look at love for interpersonal relationships and flourishing relationships, right? Taking it a step back, we're going to dive into something that we talked about in our last podcast, which is, like we're touching on it here, passing the genetic code forward, like the meaning of life, passing the genetic code forward. And that's like my opinion of it. Love, is there and it's reciprocated, it's given, it's received. There are times when that love is not given, received, it's not reciprocated, right? And then people move on to new relationships.
Mm.
And then I've always asked myself, well, why is like why are these things happening across the planet? Why is sexual violence a thing? Why is cheating a thing? Why, because if there's love, there's got to be, a reason for these negative aspects of those things. And the only thing I can think of is spreading genetic code forward, programmed animalistic instincts to spread, and that strips away the love that we know so well.
Sure, but at the same time, Micah, it what makes us human, because the animals have the same instincts, right? So I think being a human, I mean, being a human being means that we are past these instincts. Of course, they can move us in some ways, but we have what differs us from animals, animal instincts, and that the fact that we have reason. And I like to believe that we can, most of the times, we can get over our instincts and be different, right? I know that of course animals can love, and they love unconditionally. That's great, especially our pets at home. But us as humans, we can use this reason not to follow those animal instincts,
Mhm.
right?
And I mean, we can, but the fact that it's prevalent across the globe that
Mm.
people are not using this reason, this conscience, to utilize the positive aspects of love. And almost it'd be the opposite of love. They're utilizing that. So people that operate in love operate in, I would say, like a higher brain capacity, right? They're operating with that reason, with that conscience. They're seeking to have a interpersonal connection with what is around them and the person that they're interacting. The people that don't do that are operating with like instinctual brain capacity. They're operating on a lower level, or they're interacting with people in a way that they don't believe that a certain type of person, certain religion, or a certain race is capable of receiving the love that they have, or they're not allowed to share love with those kind of people.
Mm.
And
Or
I
maybe
think
those people are not worthy of love. Uh, so many times happens this as well.
and I think it's crazy that we are in a place now. We're advanced. We're not, living with open fires and sticks and stones and those kind of things. I mean, we're advanced. We've got computers, we've got phones, we've got all of these higher intelligence things, but we haven't really figured out love. And I think it's quite interesting to see how across the globe love and the antithesis of love operate in different realms, but almost simultaneously.
Yeah, it's always been a fight between these two. And it's we've talked about judgment in one of our podcasts. Many of these things come they're coming from lack of respect, because if we talk about universal love, like loving each other like human beings, like being part of the same tribe, right? You think about this universal love, which doesn't have to be huge or proven in some very crazy way, like doing some fireworks every evening or something like this. It's just this respect, care for the others, being considerate of the other people's opinions and so on, right? So that's a whole area of things we can do to show our love, our universal love. Something we are not choosing to do it anymore. It's sometimes like you're saying, it's like our primal brain, our reptilian brain, came into mode a few years ago and just messes things lately.
Absolutely. So we're talking about like love moving away from things that are good. Let's talk about uh, unconditional love, right? So like we hear that all the time. It's in movies, it's in books, it's on, TV commercials. I don't know, it's wherever. Unconditional love, is it a possibility?
Between people, I don't think so. But I get unconditional love from my dogs, and I bet you're getting you're getting it from your pets as well. So, but people with reason, I don't think they can love unconditional. I mean, maybe you can love, but you step away from it if it brings you suffering. That's what I think.
Mhm. So like that would be unconditional love to a point, and I agree with that. I don't think complete unconditional love is a possibility. because otherwise one party, I have a philosophy that is that if somebody can take advantage of something or do something wrong and get away with it, they will do it and keep doing it if there's no punishments. And it's not
Mm.
necessarily it's kind of fact, but
It
you
is,
can't
yes.
you can't appease somebody into loving you, right? So unconditional love, absolute, would mean that one person is taking advantage of the other person, or that
Yeah.
both people are taking right. That both people are taking advantage of the other person, each other, which means that it's not actually love; it's manipulation. So I think
Or
having healthy boundaries and conditional, like
yeah.
it's unconditional until it hits the condition that causes that to go the opposite direction, right?
Mm. Yeah. But talking about punishment, yes, people can or might be doing bad things if they can get away with it. And I could see this very clearly when I moved to Denmark. And everyone is really in the Nordic countries, everyone is very civilized and they are following the rules perfectly, so they don't get away from the rules, not even for a second. And of course, from Eastern Europe, where we are Latin, we have hot blood. We don't like to follow the rules. We are always admiring the Nordic countries. But what do you know? They have huge fines for anything. So that's the secret. They're not civilized just like this. They woke up in one day and they said, "Okay, let's be civilized." They were taught to be like this
Mhm.
by by getting fines. And it's the same in maybe in love. When we fall in love, sometimes we become blind. It's what they say, right? Love is blind, and we
Been there.
forget those limits. Yeah, we forget about those limits, and then we might be suffering because of it. So we have to start putting not putting conditions, but trying to have some boundaries, healthy
Mhm.
ones, of course, so we won't suffer.
So like, and I guess that's like that's interesting because like I've been cheated on multiple times, right? And each time I tried to change myself to fix the relationship to prevent them
Mm.
from cheating again, hoping that they would stay in the relationship, not realizing to the fact that I have to have boundaries myself. Because like if I allow them back in, they will continue to think that they can get away with the same thing. That's like a criminal, right? If
Yeah.
a criminal can go out in the street and rob somebody or hurt somebody and attack police or whatever they're doing, get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, you're incentivizing the crime without a punishment. So
Yeah.
they're allowed to get away with the crime. They're not, which is the incentive, allowed to get away with the crime. Um, and there's no punishment. So in love and relationships, setting a boundary, and I've talked about this in one of my own personal videos on my YouTube channel, is that you create a boundary for yourself. Your boundary isn't telling somebody else how to live. A
Mm.
boundary is letting somebody else know that you're not going to accept if they step across this
Yeah.
threshold, this line, right? And I think that's important in love and relationships. I think it's important for people to let other people know that this is my boundary. And if that other person makes you feel bad for having that boundary, that's a manipulation as well. So it's
Mm.
about finding a good, it's it's about identifying negative traits, identifying and incentivizing positive ones, but working together in order to create like a harmonious life.
Yeah. But it comes from the fact that many people don't think they are worthy of love, and when they find someone, they just give up on any boundary and just want that love, right? To give it and receive it. And if people would understand that each and every one of us is worthy of love, it doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, we all deserve to be loved and to have the chance to love someone because it's equally important. We would be able to put this boundary in place. That's how I feel. we are all worthy of love.
Hmm. Absolutely. I did
That,
have a video where that was one of the affirmations that I had for my video.
mm,
Um, for victims of abuse is like you're all worthy of love and respect, right?
yeah, yeah,
In each relationship, love and respect go hand in hand. If somebody's disrespecting somebody else, that love meter kind of like goes down, right? If
yeah,
one person isn't spending enough time with the other person, reasonable time, right? Uh, then their love meter goes down, and then it's kind of like it's a battle rather than a team effort of growth.
mm,
It's more of a competition. And I think
exactly.
that's where, kind of like in some aspects, we're kind of like as a society, as a global society, leaning towards that competition in relationships instead of teamwork. And
Yeah,
in
I
fact,
have.
I think a lot of times, oh, my bad, I didn't mean to keep going there.
No, it's fine. I was thinking about. I have two examples. A family. Husband and wife who are always in competition, and their relationship is really bad. But I also have two friends who are boys who grew up together, and they became very good persons. They've always been in a constructive competition, not the bad. You can be in a constructive competition as well and try
Absolutely.
to motivate each other and so on. So it's such a difference to watch these two couples, let's say, right, and to watch them see how the ones that are doing a teamwork but in competition, they
Mhm.
grew every day, and the other ones who are just trying to, what's the word, to try to fault each other all the time. I'm better than you. I'm gonna be the best. I'm gonna do this better, and so on. It's getting their relationship is getting bad.
Right.
So
It gets rocky at that point,
yeah,
right?
yeah, sure.
And so let's kind of swing back to love for like genetic purposes, casting the genetic code forward, right? So in order for that to work, and I'm going to go into a controversial topic here, not that I'm not inclusive, because I could care less what you do and who you are with your life, right? But love is a biochemical reaction that creates that causes a physical action
Mm,
that then moves towards procreation, right? So we're talking about sex. And then that casts the genetic code forward between those two individuals. Okay. Now,
yeah,
not that I'm against any other relationship. I could care less what somebody else does with their life, but their genetic code stops. So, like, if a man and a woman get married, they have kids, they procreate, they're moving their family forward, they're moving their genetic line forward. Maybe they're having one, two, three, four, five kids, um, depending on, like their financial means, their religious, beliefs about it,
mm,
personal beliefs, right? The people that are not doing that, they are falling into essentially a genetic deadline where they may or may not be the last of their bloodline, right? If they don't have brothers and sisters that are procreating, right? So let's say if a parent has a kid, that kid ends up being gay or trans, right? No fault, right? I don't care. Do what you want. However, that genetic line stops with that
it
kid.
depends if they choose to. There's ways to have kids now without having a partner who can have kids, so they
Right. I
can use
mean, so you could use
surrogate
like a
mother.
surrogate, you can
Yeah,
use like the other options, right? But the chances of that being coming to fruition are very slim,
yeah,
right? So like cost effective wise, right? So and then if we have like trans, right? Let's say like full trans, they get surgery to
mm,
become trans, right? Now, they cannot physically pass their
Yeah.
genetic line, right? And
Yeah.
especially if they're doing it as kids. If they make the decision as a kid to transition from one sex to the other, uh, one biological sex, I think I have to put that in there because there's controversial topics on whether there's two sexes or genders, and sex and gender are interchangeable and all this other mumbo jumbo. And what it really comes down to is that there has to be a male, there has to be a female in order for there to procreate, right? Doesn't matter if they're getting a surrogate, whether they're getting a donor egg, there was a female that provided the donor egg, right? There was a male that provided the sperm, right? So love creates life and moves it forward uh, in that biomechanical, biochemical sense.
Yeah, it depends on how you translate love, because I have friends who can male female married, they cannot have kids, so they are thinking of, or they are in the process of adopting. So it doesn't mean that they don't love each other. It doesn't mean that they're not gonna love that child that they're going to adopt. Of course, they won't pass their genes further. That's too bad, but they can still love.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, I'm adopted. So, like, everything that I say comes from like a purely, I'm looking from the outside in at something that, this is the hard facts about it, right? I mean, it's not necessarily that I have an opinion about each of these things.
It's
It's literally
facts.
the hard facts, right?
Yeah.
So I was adopted. My mom loves me very much.
Hmm.
My father, he's not always in the picture, but he is, when he is, he's there. He's there for me. When I need it, he's there. But he's not always there. And so my mom, I was adopted, loved me, raised me, took care of me. And she's coming out to visit, here soon. I'm pretty excited about that. But
Hmm.
like,
It's great.
you're right. So in this aspect, love is transitory, right? So like we love our pets. You love Tommy, you love your other new puppy. I got Leo, right? So love
Yeah.
is transitory in that aspect because you can love things that are not necessarily your genetic code, right? Love of water, love of nature, right? All of these things happen uh because of love, right? We love certain things and we are drawn to them and we go to them. Like me, we talked about me going to like the forest and the ocean and stuff like that. I love being in that environment, going up to the mountain. I love doing that. So I
Mm.
go do it.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm in love with those things. I'm not like not romantically attracted to mountains and oceans and forests. Um, it's that I feel that love connection to the environment. And I think that's also important, a distinction to make. There is in love and there is love.
Mm-hmm.
You can be in love with somebody, you can be in love with your significant other partner.
But
Um,
you know that in love stops at one point. The biochemical reaction stops.
mhm,
So it depends on what what that in love transforms into.
mhm,
It transforms in respect, care, and millions of other things. It depends on who you're asking. So it's very important that to to know that this in love stops. How I don't remember what the science said about it. About 2.5 years, maybe
mhm,
it's just gone, and it just transforms in pure love, care for each other, respect, and many other things.
right? Um, let's go on that, right? So you talked about 2.5 years, relationships lasting like a certain period of time, right? Everyone loves the honeymoon phase.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone loves being in it. Everything's exciting, everything's great, everything's all, physical and intimate and all this other stuff, right? But once it moves from in love to love,
Mm-hmm.
like that deeper connection, the deeper understanding of love. Some
Exactly.
of like, I mean, some of the honeymoon stuff falls off, and
Mm-hmm.
it does happen. It happens. And anybody who tell you it doesn't happen is probably faking it until they make it. But it does happen, and that transition period from in love to love is where you normally see relationships either make it or
Mm-hmm.
break, right?
Yeah.
So we've kind of got to that point. Now, think about it like this. Let's go back to the genetic code part of this. If if love is there for the sole purpose of procreation, what are a lot of people doing in the um, initial phase, the honeymoon phase of the relationship, not the maintenance phase, the honeymoon phase? What are they doing? They're having sex. They're a procreate. They're simulating procreation.
They're
They're
nursing.
yeah, yeah. They're quite active, right?
Yeah.
That drops off later
Mm-hmm.
in the maintenance phase where we're loving, we're caring for each other, we're creating this household environment, right? That definitely does drop off. I'm not saying it completely drops off, but it does drop off.
And it's also, Micah, where the hard work comes into play,
Mhm.
right? It's where we have to start working for building this relationship. And it's
Mhm.
not easy. So many don't care about it, don't want to do this hard work.
Yeah, and that's the hard part. They want to stay in the honeymoon phase all the
Mm-hmm.
time. It's always the honeymoon phase. It's always something new. It's always something exciting. But then they're missing out on the part of love that the honeymoon phase is there to facilitate, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like, and it kind of goes two ways, and everything everything to me is always like there's always this one and this one and this one. There's so many different routes, right? The first route is that the honeymoon phase facilitates procreation. So like if we look at it from an animal instinct side of view, the honeymoon phase is there to facilitate lots of sex and to get the genetic code move forward with this individual. Now, once that falls off, you're moving on to another potentially, right? Let's say the relationship goes sour, the hard work didn't get put in, the higher level work, the reasoning part, the advanced brain part of the work didn't get put in to that relationship, the communication, the effort. Then we're moving on to, we as a species would be moving on to the next person to get that honeymoon phase, to spread that genetic. That's more thinking in the line of the instinctual version, the reptilian brain, the animal brain,
Yeah.
the where we're procreating, whether the honeymoon phase after honeymoon phase after honeymoon phase after honeymoon phase. And we're doing that and we're having kids every time. Now we're genetic code is spread out. Now, if you look at viruses, bacteria, I mean, that's what they do. They replicate rabbits. They do the same thing. We're always talking about rabbits thumping all over the place. That's exactly what they're doing. They're spreading their genetic code as fast as possible. Now, geese, some birds, will mate for life. Some animals, mammals, they will mate for life. And if they don't have, like if their partner dies, they do not move on. They
Yeah.
are, they do not mate again. That is it. They stay with that, right? So there's two aspects of it. And what is it? Because those are animals, right? They don't have that higher level thought like we do. At least we don't think they do. But
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, the ones that are not mating again are behaving similar to a man and a woman that get together and stay together, or whoever partners that get together and they stay together for life,
Mm-hmm.
which over time you've seen a decline in. So at the beginning, when people were lower, they were not Homo sapiens, right? Or they were Homo sapiens, but they were early Homo sapiens, right? In the timeline, the lifespan was shorter, the
Mm-hmm.
turnaround, the life cycle was shorter. Now we're living longer, and
yeah, I'm seeing a decline in people getting married, a decline in people having children. I'm seeing a decline in meaningful relationships. I'm seeing more turn towards the fast, the higher rate, but there's no like birth happening, right?
Mm.
They're having these relationships that are going fast, and they're having a lot of them, but they're not really turning out anything. And I think that's a societal problem that we're seeing, is that we've moved away from family and like those kind of things, and we've kind of moved towards it's almost like going to a casino and playing like 20 different machines
Mm.
throughout your life.
Yeah,
And you know what I mean? It's interesting to see how love has changed um from the beginning of what I know it to be and to what it is today.
I blame the liberals. I really do. I mean, the sexual revolution and this, I mean, I'm not a feminist, and I've never been, and I believe that men and women should be, like, do you know the yin and yang from the Chinese?
Mhm.
That's what I feel about. I'm sure you know the sign where it's white and black and uh
Oh,
masculine
yin
and
yang. Okay, yeah, yeah.
yeah. And that's what I think about us as humans. We should complete each other, not fight which one should be. Or I don't see how a woman can be equal with to a man. That's something I cannot see, or a man with a woman. It's something I cannot see. But I think the problems in our society started when someone thought about this, like a woman should be equal with a man, and that's when things started to change. That's how I feel about it. I
Mhm.
mean, before this sexual revolution and these ideas about feminism, you could see real families where the man was in charge, but the woman was respected. We talk about reasonable people, not about the crazy ones. So the reasonable families, right? Where the
Mhm.
man was conducting the house, the woman was taking care of the kids and the education of the house and the house. So it was this yin and yang, right? A completion between all of them. Right now, it's this competition. We should be equal, or we should be more than men, or men should be more than women. And that's where we don't meet in great families anymore.
Mhm.
That's how I feel. So I blame it on the liberals.
I mean, there's also something to be said for like I'm all for believe whatever you want to believe, but don't make me believe what you believe,
Mhm.
right? Everyone's
Yeah,
entitled to their opinion.
yeah, I respect this about you, but from my point of view, I wish I could force someone to believe things that I believe. I wish everyone should be forced to go back to the traditional norms.
Mhm.
Sometimes I wish this very much. So, yeah.
Well, from a human point of view, moving forward, when I look at what you're saying, traditionally,
Mm,
um, that would provide a society that is growing. Where I mean, because I listen to interviews of even feminists or women that like they want that strong dominant man, but they're advocating for not strong dominant men.
mm-hmm,
So it's kind of like they're shooting themselves in their own foot. They're creating an environment where these things are possible, but they're not willing to accept them themselves moving forward. So I've seen interviews before, and I don't want to get super off topic here, but like I've seen interviews before where I've seen like feminists that are, like starting to get older. They're getting into their 30s, they're getting into their 40s. They spent their entire, youth into college and whatever, either partying or like protesting men or
Mm,
something, and now they want to get married, they can't have kids, they can't have a family, but also by creating equality between men and women, right? The government is now getting twice as much taxes. Women are going to work, women are spending money.
mm-hmm.
So the government is now grown from the economy that is created by having men and women go to work. Now that we're going off topic, off of love a little bit, I went down a conspiracy theorist route a little bit, but it is something that I see. It's something that I'm aware of. I look at. I can't tell people what to do. I know you wish we could tell people what to do.
Sometimes I wish, yeah. Sometimes I.
It's like it's almost like you want to be like, hey, look, this is good for you. And you can present them with, hey, look, this is good for you. It's good for you to have, like a partner and then like procreate and move forward and maybe not go to work as much. And, like you can say those things. Quite controversial nowadays. Some people get very upended about other people's having opinion while they're cramming their opinion down other people's
Mhm.
throat, right? And that's
Yeah,
kind of like it's the double-edged sword. It's like you want to be able to communicate with somebody, but if they're going to like cram down your throat and not listen to what you have to say, uh, they don't want to adopt what you have to say, but they're forcing you to adopt what they're living. And I think
yeah.
that's a
Both
very
ways.
dangerous and slippery slope.
Me too. But at the same time, I bet you that any if any woman would try to be more close to the household, I'm not saying not going to work, but just maybe choose some jobs much proper for a woman, be much close to your kids. Many of the
Mhm,
kids are growing up without the mother's love.
mhm,
We're talking about love because the mother is obsessed with her career and work,
mhm,
and being equal to a man.
mhm.
But I bet you that if this woman would be at home more and maybe cooking something, doing homeworks with the kids, they will be much more fulfilled that they are now. That's
I
how I
mean, so
feel.
you're talking about you're saying that if a woman volunteered herself to be in the more effeminate role in the relationship, male fem, and they were to be in that role, they would feel better. And it's interesting because I have seen interviews and I'm where people have said that they would feel better if the men was in the dominant role or if they weren't
Mhm.
working as much. I mean, you even see it, these really strong, independent women. They're like, oh, I want a man to give me 70% of his paycheck and a car and a house and stuff like that. I was like, how does that work if you're strong and independent or you're going to work? And so it's like
Paradox.
it's
Yeah.
very it's
Hmm.
very interesting to me to see behavior in this way.
Hmm.
But whatever that behavior is, it is counterintuitive to love. They're loving
Hmm.
themselves, they're pushing themselves forward.
Yeah,
They're not necessarily loving um, outwardly. And maybe they don't actually love themselves. They're seeking that material, they're seeking that fulfillment, that energetic fulfillment because they don't love internally, which means they can't love outwardly.
sure. Yeah.
All right.
Um, it's very important for us to learn how to love ourselves, but in not in a very selfish way, because I'm gonna be honest with you, when I've been to the therapist the first time and they told me you have to learn to love yourself, I thought it equals being selfish, but it doesn't. So loving yourself means having those boundaries you're talking about,
Mhm.
um, respecting yourself, taking care of yourself, and so on. Once you learn how to love yourself, you can love the others in the right way, because sometimes if you don't know how to love yourself, you might become, without you knowing, you can become manipulative, you can become abuser, without your own will. So it's very important to learn the right way to love ourselves, and then we can love the others in the right way as well.
Absolutely. I think being able to love who we are, I think that's what it is. I think it's loving who we are as a
Mm.
person, like working to bring that acceptance inward towards you know, what we look like, what, you know, like what we know, what we've learned through life, the experiences, and like learning to accept ourselves as a whole
Mm-hmm.
rather than material things or seeking validation or attention outside of. We need to love ourselves to generate that internally, and once we do that, loving outwardly is so much easier.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, thank you everybody for watching this episode of Life Chronicles and Deep Dives podcast. If you have any questions, comments, leave them in the comment section below. And we'll also be linking our websites in the description box. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you learned something from it. And we'll see you in the next one.